Welcome back to an episode here on the Heart and Hustle podcast alongside LeAnn Hughes. What's up? How you doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing good. We were having such a great conversation before we even hit record, and I want to start off with this dandelion. For those that may feel that they cannot control the controllable, or control the uncontrollable. Actually, you have a dandelion on your wrist. What was the meaning that you said behind it?
I do, and I think in the work that we do, it's you can control things, but at the end of the day, there are a lot, as you say, a lot of things that can't be controlled. And so I wear it on my wrist as a reminder that we are where we are supposed to be, and we're going to land where we're supposed to be. Because dandelions, they are what they are,
Yeah.
and they blow in the wind and land where they belong. And so it's just a reminder to me. I don't think of them as weeds. I think they're quite beautiful. So just a reminder that, we can do all the things that we know to do, but at the end of the day, we're going to be where we're supposed to.
I love that. I go back to
Yeah.
we got to go back on to why you even got or how long it's been and the why. But I would tell you that I was walking with my son the other day, yesterday or the day before, 2 years old, and you're all right. Sometimes weeds, we think weeds and it's just yucky and ugly, but sometimes they really produce some of the most beautiful things, right? So my son picked up this yellow flower and brings it to grandma, and I'm like, that actually is a pretty yellow flower. And then sometimes you see the pink ones come out, you're like, those are actually some really, so even through those hard weeds, right, something beautiful still grows out of it, such as a dandelion. So that is actually
Yeah.
right when you think about that. And so many times we're so quick to make that impression of it's not good, right? It doesn't produce well. But look at some of the things it does produce. So going back though, why and how long, like, did you get that tattoo? How long ago?
I got it. I think it was right after COVID, and I don't know. I was just looking. I wanted a tattoo on my wrist, and I was just, thinking about life and thinking about, the work that we do. And, COVID was a time that we were also feeling a lack of control. The
True.
whole country was feeling a lack of control over things, and it just sort of clicked in my head that that's what I wanted. So, yeah,
Is it first?
yeah.
First and only?
No.
Oh, you got more? Okay, okay, okay. Set it up.
Yeah, I
Okay.
have several. I have several. I've got the other one that's really special to me. My father, who I think we'll probably talk about here in a few minutes,
Yeah.
he passed away when I was 15, and he was a ham radio operator.
Hmm.
And which people now, I mean, you're probably so young you don't even know what a ham radio
I was going
operator
to ask you.
is.
Yeah, yeah, I was going to ask you after.
But it's like, think early internet. Like it was a way, so ham radio operators functioned in crises. So it started with using Morse code. And then you moved up and, eventually had a microphone and were able to talk to people. So he spoke with people all over the world from the basement of our house. Who were also ham radio operators. So his
Wow.
call sign was KA4BNA. And so I have that on my other wrist
Let's
here, just to
go.
remind me of him when I look down. So, yeah.
That is so cool. I mean, I only got one tattoo, but I love that you didn't just get a tattoo. They have meanings. I was so close to just getting that random tattoo that everybody got. The Jesus hands
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I almost got that. Then I almost got around the time of '08. Everyone was doing stars, the shaded stars, and I almost got the shaded stars. But every time I went to the tattoo parlor, something was happening. So I just didn't do it for years, and then when I did, it was very meaningful, and I'm so grateful. When we think of art, it just has to have meaning, especially if we're going to put it on our bodies. So I'm glad that you've got these tattoos that mean something to you that you still
Yeah.
hold close to you as well.
Yeah.
And that's a good story. You did
Sure.
mention your father passing away at 15. That's high school days. And, I know I was going through my own trauma, but couldn't imagine losing that parent that you're waking up to every single day. That was, your probably your idol, right? Like I always think to, as a parent, and seeing my kids, the kids just think we're the best thing in the world.
They do. Yeah.
How did you navigate that? And like, what did that really, teach you in that moment?
Yeah, so I'm an only child, and I was a daddy's girl,
Oh,
for
wow.
sure. In fact, I think it would hurt my mom sometimes that I wanted to be outside when he was, mowing the lawn and doing the things. So, yeah, it was tough to navigate, and I did not enjoy high school. High school was tough for me as well. I was thinking about that, ironically, just thinking about that over the weekend, seeing students come in to the university here and how much I hated every day of high school and just could not wait for it to be over. I was lost and spent a lot of time sleeping. Had a very close connection to my grandmother. And so sometimes when, my girlfriends were going out and stuff, I would pretend like I was sick and I would just go hang out at my grandmother's house. And I buried myself in books. I'm a lifelong reader. And so just, really, but I also had some good support around me so that when I did go to the University of Tennessee, I think what I found there was I could do this because they gave me the secret to it, which is they wouldn't have admitted you if they didn't know you can do it. All you have to do is be present and do the work. And that simple formula for me is what carried me through my university days, and really transformed my life because I've worked in higher education almost my entire career as a result of, my formative time at the University of Tennessee. So good people telling me and giving me that support and confidence, going to college is a challenging thing. And I say that to the students here. In fact, we just had admitted student day, and I have this graphic that I show them that's a circle. And I say, just picture yourself standing in the middle of this. These are all the resources the university has to make sure you're successful. And it's everything from our counseling services to, our healthcare facility here on campus to advisors. It's all here, and you can do this because I think particularly post-COVID, this generation of students is also doubtful of themselves. And worried about, their success going to college. So again, I think it's all about just knowing what you have around you and tapping into those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. And then just talking about, I love the visual. I'm a visual type person. So you just kind of painting out that picture of someone in the middle and all the resources that are within the school. I don't know that that's actually communicated good enough, right? I'm someone that went to college. I can imagine college and universities throughout our country have these resources. But I always say that it's like, how are we communicating these resources? Some of it sometimes is in our own backyard. Like literally being at a school and there's resources there and you don't even know that they exist. Like, do you think that, what is the gap? Like, is it the way that we communicate? Is it, does it should be starting a little younger in the high school days, right? Because it seems like you also learned a lot in college. Maybe, of course, school taught us things, but college was that light bulb moment that like, wait a minute, there's more to this. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think there's so many resources that people do not grab because they just don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of not grabbing because of not knowing, but also not having the confidence to advocate for yourself. And so I think that's another thing that, in the formative time during university, that we really need to teach students. And it's always so interesting me from the enrollment standpoint, because I see, Saturday I was taking enrollment deposits, and it was so interesting to watch how some of the parents just came up and went ahead and filled out the paperwork. But most of them were like, you're the adult. This is your paperwork. You fill it out. It's time for you to do this. And, I think that's the way to go, is to really let them know that it's going to be on them. There's a phrase in higher education, and I don't know who coined it, but it's the idea of the helicopter parent, right? And
Okay.
so, really working, we have resources for the parents during our orientation that help them navigate. And we have communications to the parents as they're going through the process about, thinking through how you want your child to advocate for themselves. There also may be a moment where they want to come home because they think they can't do this, and your job is to say no. Stick it out a little bit longer, unless there's something really, serious happening, of course. But your job is to say no. So I think there's some of that, but it's hard to. I also have this analogy that I talk about. I have a 21-year-old son, and I had a picture of, we have a Springer Spaniel, and I held a picture of the Springer Spaniel and a picture of my 21-year-old son. He was actually more like 18 at the time. And I said, what's the difference between these two things? And it's not a lot. Their attention spans are very close to the same. So I think part of it is just repeating the messages so that they get through.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a lot of what we do in higher ed is you can't just say it once. You have to say it multiple times through multiple channels, and, hopefully it sinks in. But then you also have to be, I think we like to call it intrusive advising, so that you're coming to them without them coming to you and saying, okay, let's talk about this. Have you gone to the Career Center? You need to do that, because if you want to major in this and you want an internship, now is the time to start talking about what you want your path to be. So I think schools who do that really well have better retention rates and also happier graduates at the end of the day.
You dropping some gems here. I also noticed that you love to give visuals. Where did you learn that from? Because we're only 10 minutes in. I've got 2 visuals, and I'm like, okay, I can see it. Funny thing is, mental attention span, by the way, real quick. My wife always liked to tell me I have a squirrel brain. So for her, she would probably put a picture of a squirrel and me, like, what's the difference? And then I would have understood my attention. So go
I
ahead.
get it.
Why visuals? Why is that your thing?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question, because I certainly am not an artist, but I did grow up. It's funny, my best friend in the whole world growing up, and still very, very close, he is an artist. And so we would lay on our stomachs on the sidewalk, and I would write stories and he would illustrate the stories. And that was like fun for us when we were,
Wow.
elementary school age. So maybe it came from just, from him. I'm not sure,
You
but
never
I
know.
do. I
Yeah,
am a
listen.
visual thinker, a visual learner.
I
Yeah.
just in 10 minutes you gave me 2 visuals, and they were really good visuals that were easy for someone to catch on. There's something there for sure. Um, Go to college. Of course, you didn't know this probably role existed. A lot of you guys are in this role for some apparent reason. It was like, speaking a different language per se. But what did you actually graduate with, like your degree, and then how did you get into this role?
Sure. So, my mother took me to a psychologist, and I did a test that was, it's the Campbell Strong Inventory. I'm not sure if it even exists today, but it basically takes your skill level, your skills, like what you're inherently, almost like a Myers-Briggs
Okay,
type
okay.
thing,
Yep.
but then it helps match you with potential careers and jobs and majors. And so it told me that I should go into communications and marketing. And so I went into English. I didn't listen to it. I loved my English classes. As I mentioned, I'm a lifelong reader. So I majored in English, and I had a minor in psychology. And when I finished college, I went to a master's program. My thinking at the time was that I was going to be an English professor, because I'd fallen in love with higher education.
Okay.
So when I was going through my master's program and kind of on the fence about whether or not to go forward with the PhD, and ended up working at a computer company doing training. And I was a girl that when I wrote my thesis for my master's degree, I wrote each chapter as a different Word document because I was terrified to merge them into one. This is how
Oh
little I
my
knew about
God.
computers, but ended up teaching end user training for Microsoft Word products, and as well as
Wow.
a couple other things. And so it really gave me a secondary confidence in working hard to know what you're doing, and then to present that to people in a way that they understand how to navigate. And so
Yeah.
they sort of figured out that I had an eye for marketing, and so they put me over marketing.
Wow.
And so I went from there to I'm from Kingsport, Tennessee. So I was at the Kingsport Chamber of Commerce, and I was the marketing director for the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And so I did that for 3 or 4 years, and then the marketing director at a university there in the area came open, and I applied for that. And I was at that job for over 12 years and worked as the director of marketing and left as the VP for enrollment management. So
That's
lots of
crazy.
opportunities happen there. But I think it's that, that liberal arts core, whatever you major in, if you're able to write and think critically, take things to the next step without having to be told, what something needs to look like, and think that way, you succeed in your career because it gets recognized and people move up the ladder. So I always say, there's a lot going on in higher education right now about majors and the outcomes that come from majors. But having worked at all liberal arts at universities my whole career, I can tell you that we have graduates who are CEOs who majored in English or
Yeah.
psychology or philosophy or something like that. So
I was gonna say you
yeah.
just really kind of probably painted a picture for somebody that felt that they had this English major and couldn't really do much with it. You really opened that door. Really interesting that you ran away from communications and marketing, but you are in communications and marketing. Like if sometimes we just life be life and we got to figure out. Sometimes we're a little
Hmm.
stubborn, we go through life, but if we really tune in, and tap into
Hmm.
ourselves, we can get there faster, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes. But sometimes we
Yeah.
just want to figure it out. You figured it
Hmm.
out, and I can imagine those lessons also made you who you are today. Without those, are we the same people? But that is so cool that you've someone even seen that in you, right? Someone seen you to give you that marketing opportunity when
Hmm.
you just thought like, I just want to do this, and then you end up back at school, something that also gave you passion. Um, but one thing that you keep mentioning is confidence. I think it's huge. I think that not. I mean, I felt for me, I guess people would say that I had it, but I don't
Hmm.
know that I had it. And I think until I was 30 years old, that's when I realized I had the confidence. And it really took me to become a facilitator, which I never
Hmm.
thought I would be a facilitator for airline
Hmm.
industry. Because facilitating, I thought facilitating kids, I'm not teaching no kids. Like that's crazy. But here I'm teaching adults that act worse than kids. So then it gave me, a lot of confidence to speak in front of peers, right? Because these were people
Hmm.
that worked for the same company, but just probably different department. To travel the world and then teach in another country, like the confidence to go do that, and
Hmm.
realizing that every time you do it, you're so good, and everyone looks at you and tells you how good you are. Um, that kind of helped, right? How important has confidence been for you on this journey to even where you're at today?
Yeah, I think it's always that mix of believing in yourself, but also having humility at the same time, and knowing that, I work in an industry that people have lots of ideas about what admissions should be, what marketing a university should be, and I choose to look at it in a way that is it's not a zero sum game. If someone has an idea of something that we should try and do, I want to have the humility to say, let's try that. That sounds like a really good idea. But at the same time, I think, I probably didn't have confidence when I was in high school and when I was
Mhm.
growing up. But something about doing well in college when I went to such a large university and made really good grades, and looking around and thinking there's all these people here,
Yeah.
and I'm doing well here, and then that behind it, doing the teaching that I did. I remember one time I was standing in front of a group of PhD chemists, and we were talking about something that you probably have never heard of because this was back in the day, the file allocation table, which is called the FAT table. That is what early Windows and early DOS programs were based on. And I remember thinking, is he calling me fat? Like, what is he saying? So, it's finding those moments when you admit, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But I think that, it is an important thing to believe in yourself. And,
Yeah.
I was fortunate that I had people around me who also believed in me, but not everyone has that. And so,
Yeah.
working to be mentors to others and really seeing other people and shining that light on them and helping them know that they are, that we see you and the things that you're doing, I think is a really important thing for us as adults to do for others once we've,
Yeah.
landed in a successful place in our life.
Hey, if you're getting value from this conversation, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. We drop episodes like this regularly, and we don't want you to miss a single one. Now let's get back to it. I agree. I People ask me that all the time. I mean, I'm one of 18 kids. I told you a story of sexual abuse and adoption. Probably shouldn't be here, but people ask me that, like, why me? Like, what do you think made you the successful one? And it's that. I think it was people that poured into me when I could even see for myself, right? So many things that I remember of, the chief development officer of Subway when I think I told you, did I tell you I did Undercover Boss? The show Undercover
You
Boss?
did. I love
Yeah.
that.
So,
Yeah.
that gentleman, still hearing his words, and I'm 36 years old, that happened almost 10 years ago. But there was those people that when I was lost and I was struggling, that allowed me to feel seen, allowed me to always remember to know my worth, right? You see the message in the back. And I would tell you, it was a gut check from the same chief development officer, still good friends with him. And last year I spoke to him, and he hit me with Ephraim, sometimes we teach best what we need the most. And you've been teaching people to know their worth for so long, but when do you know yours? And that was like, damn, it's like practice what you preach, right? Like, and
Yeah.
from that moment on, I really had to practice what I preached. And it was so hard. It was very hard, but it was having that confidence that you can do it. It was knowing your worth. It was believing in yourself just like everybody else believed in you. Because at some point, that matters the most, is that you believe in you. So yeah, kudos to the people that have been in your life and continue to be in your life. Who are some of the mentors right now that pour into your
Yeah.
cup?
Yeah, that's so great. And I was just thinking as you were saying that, I think it's also very easy when you're in a position of leadership. Everyone has an opinion, and you're going to get criticized. There are going to be people who don't like you. There are going to be pushback. There's going to be, changes in presidents and at a university, and how that's going to affect your working relationship and what you're doing in your work. And so I think it is a really great balance of, it takes someone who, and it took me a long time. And I think, part of that is as a woman, as a Southerner, I'm from Appalachia originally. And so sort of that idea of being nice to everybody and wanting everyone to like you. And then something sort of clicks, and you're like, it's okay that everybody doesn't like me. They don't have to. I
Yeah.
just have to be me, and I have to be the right me with the right values. But my mother has been a lifelong supporter in my life, and I would say my husband is a very, very close supporter of mine as far as my career goes. He took a sort of a back seat with his career in order for us to continue doing what is a passion. He works in education as well, so that always makes it good. And then I just have some other people that are, just dear friends that just lift me up, and and coming here to Valparaiso. It was leaving a lot of those people behind and moving, further away from them, and finding friends here, but also recognizing when you get to be my age that it's so important to keep your friends close and trust and value them. And so I'm actually leaving tomorrow. One of my friends back in Illinois it's his birthday, so I'm going to drive back and we're going to go to dinner, because that's important to me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to move all the way across the country because I
Wait,
want to
wait. I
keep
gotta
those
stop right there,
connections.
LeAnn. Did you
Yeah.
say it was a he?
Yeah.
So my best friend is a female, and people don't
Hmm.
realize that a male and a female can be best friends, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, talk to that. Like, was there ever like, did you grow up with the same thing I grew up with? It's like, how are you guys friends? You guys must like each other. And it's like, no, this is just literally someone that when I was struggling, she was also kind of ideally struggling, and we were just struggling
Hmm.
together. Like we were
Yeah.
just, so and we're like brothers and sisters, if you ask me.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, we say friends, but we're damn near family, right? So,
Hmm.
did you experience some of that too?
Yeah, and so my best friend growing up, I mean, he lives in South Carolina now, but the one that I was writing the stories with,
Okay.
Still very, very, very close friend. We text all the time, and our moms are best friends, and so it's a family connection as well. His mother feels like my mother, so I think, and that's how we were. People would say that sometimes, but it was like, really, that's ew, like that's my brother. Like I don't even,
Yes,
my mind doesn't even go there because I think of him like a sibling. Yeah, and so yeah, I've just
that is
continued
funny.
to have both male and female friends because
Same.
I don't believe the Harry met Sally line about how you can't be
That
friends.
is so cool. You often don't see people that have that opposite sex as a best friend. I have two of them, both females,
Hmm.
and I met them in high school, to be quite frank.
Hmm.
And we did not like each other, and we probably were at each other's necks. But here we are, 20 years later. 20 years
Hmm.
later, and we're still great friends, and
Yeah.
part of each other's families now. So that's always cool to really see the growth on. You mentioned they were with you when you were young, so seeing that LeAnn that was going through life and how she
Hmm.
built herself to where she is today, I can imagine they're just happy friends to see you, grow.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned your husband. I want to go back to it because shout outs to him, right? It takes two to tango, and for him to just kind of be that rock for you and say, "Hey, go live your dreams," that is huge for him as
Hmm.
well. So I wanted to go back and make sure, from man to man, that I
Hmm.
show him some love. I'm pretty sure he'll appreciate that. But what are some of the like underrated degrees that people think are not good or there's no jobs there? You kind of mentioned English as one, so that's where I got my brain going. I've
Hmm.
heard people think that engineering is no longer a thing because of AI, but then who's going to control the AI, right? Someone
Hmm.
has to control it. Do you think there's any degrees that people don't look towards to anymore because they may have this wrong impression?
I do. I mean, I think things are going to come back around. I was actually having a conversation Saturday with one of our computer science faculty who
Mm,
nationally we're seeing that just decrease significantly.
yeah.
And I think a large part of it is AI. But when you look at the hiring practices and you look at the jobs in computer science, they're actually increasing. So, what is happening in the corporate level is I think corporations are using that as a way to, sort of downsize and use AI for some of
Yep.
the things that were more rote practices. But there still needs to be, as you said, someone at the higher level that is able to write these programs and able to make the things work the way that they need to work. And I think at the end of the day, it doesn't, there are some majors, obviously, if you major in something like nursing, it's more difficult for you to go do and be something else. But most majors, I just think if I look back at the path of my life and I look at some of the people who've mentored me, and one that I failed to mention is the first president that I worked for, Dr. Greg Jordan, and how my career, I can look back at each job and I can see how it built me to here. And I know that here is going to build me to whatever comes next if I don't retire here because I love it so much. But I think it's there's a plan. You just have to be open to what the world is going to bring to you and be smart about how you're positioning yourself. But I think a lot of those, one of the smartest people that I work with, he developed a company that integrates AI and data to help universities understand better about what college majors are growing and shrinking. And, one of the things we've not done well in higher ed is we have added on majors, but we haven't necessarily reduced majors in a sense. And so
Yeah.
he helps with that work. He's a music major. He has his degree in music, but this is what he's doing with his life because it's
Yeah.
also mathematical and all of those things. So I think there are some really, especially with the liberal arts undergirding, that's what I'm passionate about, is that part of it.
Yep.
The people don't always understand, especially at the 18-year-old level, that liberalis and ars, that basically means the truth and freedom. And I like to think of it as the truth that sets you free. So understanding, how to think and how to understand the world that you're in, to me, is such a leg up. And even here at Valparaiso, we have engineering majors, but it's based on a liberal arts core curriculum that builds
Wow.
into engineering rather than just starting, like
Yeah.
some schools and going in engineering all the way through. So to me, I'm also really passionate about that part of it. But I do think that you asked about majors, but I also think just college in general is having a difficult time right now. It's being called into question, as are all of our institutions, the
Hmm.
value of the degree. And, we've kind of gone back and forth from everyone should go to college for free to college isn't worth it in the history of, my time in the industry. And, there's such great data that does show that college degrees, you are going to earn more over the course of your
Yeah.
lifetime with a college degree. But that doesn't necessarily mean everyone needs to go to college. My
Yeah.
son is one of those people that he probably won't, and that's okay. He's going to turn out just fine, because he's following his passion. And
Yep.
so I think that's the other part of it is just really helping people find the next step for them and what makes sense. And, colleges to me was formative. And I know that attending the university changed my life and, changed the course of the direction that I was going in, and gave me a purpose, a reason to get up in the morning, other than, my family. So I think it's really about helping people find their path more than it is about
Hmm.
saying college, you shouldn't go to college or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I think someone painted this picture for me the other day on school. It is definitely an investment,
Hmm.
and it's better than buying a $28,000 car that loses value.
Hmm.
Because when you invest in school, you'll probably see 3x, 4x return, right? Like,
Hmm.
and you don't see it that way, And I don't know if it's
Hmm.
because it wasn't given it to me that when I was younger, was I thought I was grown and I'm gonna figure it out, like whatever my mindset's at.
Hmm.
But I think it's back to painting pictures, Leanne. Like when you give
Hmm.
somebody that picture, right? And I think that's why you're just smiling, like, yeah, yeah, paint that picture, right? Because it's painting
Hmm.
that picture for
Hmm.
people. You mentioned something about when you were teaching at that company, right? Words.
Hmm.
And you said I just made it kind of made sense. When I taught it, I just wanted to make sense. And that's the way I
Hmm.
taught is make it make sense. So when you're
Hmm.
talking to a student that's 18 years old, you got to dumbify it. Not that they're dummies, but it's that you got to bring it to that 11th grade level because that's sometimes where people are at. We got to meet
Hmm.
them at where they're at. And I
Hmm.
think when I even say that, it brings me back to technology and AI. That's what really is doing. But I
Hmm.
do believe that at some point we're going to see that prompt engineer role where someone has to prompt it in order to get the output. You mentioned about your friend. The reason he's so good is because he understands the prompts to get
Hmm.
the data out,
Right,
right? So
right.
one thing you also mentioned before was it one tech, one? I can't remember what you mentioned last time that we spoke. It was um, man, high touch, high tech.
Oh yeah, yeah. High touch, high tech. Yeah,
What,
yeah.
what, 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 walk me through that. What does that actually mean in practice? Because I thought it was so good and it really relates to what we're talking about. People think it's just a buzzword.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I think is really important, we work at Valparaiso to know our prospective students. Our admissions counselors are reaching out, and we're not just asking them, "What do you want to major in?" We're asking them probing questions about their life. We're asking them things like, why do you want to major in engineering? What about
Hmm.
engineering is interesting to you? So we have these conversations that we're having, and then we also know, based on data, what they're doing. We can see what pages are they're landing on our website. We can see a lot of things based on what they tell us, the forms that they fill out. So all of that data is in there. And we work in an industry or a world right now where everything is curated. These students have grown up with Spotify playlists that are curated to their interest. Our Netflix landing page, my husband's and mine could not be more different.
That's so
His is
funny.
all action movies and World War II, and mine is like shrinking and things like that. And so everything is curated. So thinking through how we can, not artificially, because it really comes from a heartfelt place, and and a feeling of wanting to make sure that the students who choose to come to Valparaiso University know that we are going to get to know them, that they aren't just going to be in a class and the professor is going to say, hey, you there in the back with a hoodie. They're going to know their name, and they're going to be partially responsible for their success. So how can we take the technology and the things that we know about them to curate and to drive the information that they may be thinking about in the college process, in a way that comes through in the mediums that they are interested in, while also keeping that personal touch? And so that's what I spend a lot of my time thinking about, is how can we, I think good marketing is putting yourself, you said it a second ago about teaching. You have to put yourself where the other person is and think about what they are thinking about at that particular moment in their journey, and then try to give them the information they need to make the decision. So that's a big part of, just using technology, but also using, with AI coming out, a lot of people have questioned, well, are you even going to need admissions counselors anymore? Because AI can just write an email that says, hey, I know you're interested in playing soccer and majoring in English. You should come to Admitted Student Day. But, and there's conversations about that. My opinion
Yeah.
is that's never going to happen, at least where I'm responsible, because it is those connections. We're working to make a connection with the admissions counselor, but also helping facilitate a connection between the student and other students even before they enroll here, because we know that sense of belonging is going to have a huge impact on whether or not they are successful at the university. So it's just trying to think of ways to do that every day is a part of what I get up and where my head is. So, yeah.
You mentioned something, and I used to think like this actually, Leanne. You mentioned that you're not an artist, but you mentioned about all the creative ways that you've thought of something. While you're not an artist that
Hmm.
draws, you are artists in different ways. And I had to realize that is, no, I'm not an artist, but we think an artist is someone that paints and draws,
Hmm.
but an artist is someone that can put something together that, people probably didn't think it made sense. Right. And a lot of times that
Hmm.
is you, because you play this marketing communication, and you've always been that. That's why you're so good at it. Now that I think about it, from you writing these stories that you're probably making up, right? These stories you're
Yeah.
making up when you
Yeah.
were writing on
Yeah.
the concrete.
Yeah.
So it's like you are an artist, and sometimes we don't even realize that we have those talents because we've always told that this is what it looks like, right?
Hmm.
And it kind of go back to what we're talking about. We think that this is what the ideal college student looks like, and it's not. Right?
Hmm.
There's boomerangs. There's those that are
Hmm.
first gen. There's those that were scared but made it. Like an artist paints that picture, and you painted so many pictures today that I really truly appreciated. But I also want you to kind of go back to that little Leanne, right? That was so scared, and paint that picture for her and allow her to know. Just speak to her. What are you saying to her?
Oh gosh.
What Matter of fact, what would that visual look like if you could paint her a picture?
Oh gosh. Well, I think as a Southerner, we tell stories, right? So it'd probably be more of telling a story than it
Okay,
would
tell the story.
be,
Tell the story. Let's see it.
than
Let's
it
see
would
it.
be painting that picture. But I think, I think I would tell her it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You know, I think that is what, and to believe in myself, and to know, um, to appreciate more the people in my life. I had four grandparents that started saving for my college education the day I was born. I was so fortunate, even though I'd had all these
Yeah.
other, really difficult things that happened to me. Um, I was so fortunate that I didn't have to take out a single loan when I went to the university. And so, really appreciating that, appreciating the things around me, I would have told her to do that a little bit more too, and also not to be so stubborn. I'm still a little stubborn, but I feel like if I had listened more at times, as you mentioned earlier, I could have gotten where I wanted to go faster. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But when you have something like the loss of a father at that age, there's
Yeah.
always this sense of, it never goes away. It's
Yeah.
it's always there. It never goes away. But it, I also have wanted to do things in my life to make him proud of me.
Hmm.
And so I think that's also something I would want to convey is just, when you're making a decision or you're doing something that's, questionable, what would he say to you in that
Hmm.
moment? And
Agree.
what would he want me to do? So,
Yeah. I love
yeah.
it. I love it. And I know your dad
Yeah.
is hella proud of you, to be quite frankly. And so um glad that, moments like that, I could imagine you hear stories on both sides, right? Just that's what life is. Life gives you lemons. What do you do with them? And
Hmm.
clearly you made lemonade, and now you're pouring into the next generation because realizing it was never really about us, right? It's about how do we take life, pour into our I love that you said my son may not go to college. He's gonna be completely fine. I tell you what,
Hmm.
LeAnn, I have maybe 2 classes left to finish an associate's degree.
Hmm.
But my mindset has always been like, I did not need college, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And again, it's not for everybody, and
Yeah.
I still actually want to finish just because I want to show my kids, hey, dad did this and dad did this.
Hmm.
Don't tell me you're going to be less than. You got to go to do one or the other, right? You're going to either
Hmm.
start a business or get a job,
Right.
or go to school, one of those three, I would say.
Yeah.
But I don't even know where I was going with this, but I'm just super excited that you just never gave up on yourself because that's what it was pretty much. It's so easy to give up on yourself. But when you just have this passion and this grit, and I don't know if it's the Southern in us, right? We talk about the Southern in us. We said that multiple times because that is true. I love to tell stories, and we've clearly for the last 40 minutes been
Yeah.
telling a story. So I really appreciate it. But what can people really tap into what you guys are doing at the university level? But even, are you on LinkedIn? So maybe someone wanted to just kind of reach out as an
Sure.
individual.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn under my name at Valparaiso University, so you can search me that way. And then my email is really simple. It's leann.hughes@valpo.edu. So if you want to reach out that way, you're welcome to do that as well. So, and I'm just going to want to come on the show every week because you've pumped me up so much. But it's not. I mean, I'm not all that.
LeAnn, you are
I
all that.
just
No,
love what I'm doing. I just love what I'm doing, and I love this place.
that's it. I
So,
love it. I love that you're
yeah.
chasing passion and purpose. I think we said it before on our first call. The work that we do at this level of whether it's nonprofit, higher ed,
Hmm.
healthcare is truly just passionate work, right? We love what we do. We feel like it's purposeful work as well. We're changing lives, impacting
Hmm.
lives that we may not even see that life being impacted, but we're a part of that, right? Because we've
Hmm.
had a small conversation. So no, kudos to you, what you do, LeAnn. Kudos to what you guys are doing at the university level as well. Thank you for your time. You could be doing anything
Yeah.
else, and you spent on Monday morning here with me, so I appreciate that as well.
I
For those
loved
that are
every
still
minute of
watching,
it. Yeah,
yeah,
loved
yeah, I
every minute.
appreciate
It
it.
was great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for
For
having
the,
me.
of course, LeAnn, thank you for coming on. Guys, if you guys are still watching, make sure that you guys do like, subscribe, and comment. These are the conversation that we have. I mean, we're talking about a time where people may see all the, I guess, things that are happening in our world, but there's so many good things that are happening too, and so many people that are willing to just be that piece of your journey if you're just trying to level up. All right. So, as LeAnn said, even if it's not her university, her college, go. There's so much resource out there. Just go take a look and see how your life also could be impacted by making an investment, not in a car, but in education. LeAnn, we thank you. My name is Efrain. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Latest.